Hey everybody, what's up? You know, I did a video yesterday where I talked about, which is also going to be within the same texture, within the same description, or the same reply, if you will, here at the SonicSatAM Forums. But the video above basically, asked the question, about Ian and the situation going on there, and basically gives up theories and everything. Because a lot of people, it's like I said in there, nobody really knows what's going to happen, and we can't really say yay or nay if something's going to happen this way or if something's going to happen that way. We can't really say. However, a lot of people bring up some good theories, and believe it or not, Prime here on the Saturday Morning Sonic Forums basically said, in many, many aspects, basically did a long enough reply, if you will, where he pointed out several things. And if I could find the thing here on my iPod, I will. But basically he pointed out, first of all, about the whole beam situation. Now, that right there is sort of still, kind of up in the air, and is sort of always going to be debated among the fans, because they don't know whether or not all characters, major or minor or even small, in the comic or the comic and its spin-off, were made immune to roboticization by the alien race, by the beam alien race, or if it was just those that were roboticized. See, nobody really knows the answer to that, and it's going to be debated. I mean, true, Prime, he brought up a good point. He basically said, like some people have been saying, that it's only the roboticized citizens, and that even though in issue 129 in a backup story makes it look like Eggman's clearly stating that he can't roboticize anybody because of the beam, it kind of gets counteracted or contracted, if you will, with his attack on a village and then his situation with Loop, basically stating that because those that can't be roboticized will be legionized, and since Loop was roboticized and then de-roboticized will be legionized, well, you kind of get the idea. Now I'm trying to find some here. A lot of people have been saying a lot of stuff, Laser X5, Prime, and all of them have all been talking on this. You guys have all been talking here on this forum, so I give you credit, and Prime, I do give you credit for pointing something out. I mean, you are right. I mean, one thing you said in here is, if there's anybody to blame, it's the writers for not making things clear as to who was immune and who wasn't immune. So that's a good point. The writers, despite the transition from Ken to Ian, Carl to Ian, or whatever, they should have at least made it clear as to who was unaffected by roboticization thanks to the beam and who wasn't. You got a good point. They should have cleared that up. Now, before I get into the main topic of this, because it says without de-robotization, so, I don't know how we got off track there, but that's okay, as long as it's related to the topic in some way. One of the things he did talk about, because apparently this is getting talked about as well, is the continuity in the story. And mostly the continuity, I don't know how this got in there. He said continuity problems with the first season of SatAM. Now, basically he said the first season was pretty much an early 90s cartoon kind of thing. Like, evil villains got planned, hero goes and stops the evil villain's plan, villain retreats, and plans for the next week. kind of rinse and repeat. And that is true. A lot of Saturday morning cartoons, 90s, 80s, and even early 2000s were like that. I mean, even today as well. But here's something that I think, Prime, you and some people will agree on. It wasn't just all that. The first season was more or less an introductory season, sort of to introduce everybody to who the characters were, what their mission was about, and why they did what they did. Mostly the 13 episodes there, including the pilot episode, which I always like to look at as the comic book episode, were mostly introduction to who the characters were, what their mission was about, what the plot overall for the series was about, and henceforth, why the first season was the way it was. That's all it was. To basically give us an idea of the world and of the world that these characters lived in, who they were, and what their mission was about, and mainly what the show was about. Now, the second season, I do agree. The second season, I do agree, was more planned out and was more continuity based. But you see, I think the second season was mostly the setup for what would have been the third and maybe fourth seasons, or let's say the third to plus seasons that would have been and would have come had it not been for a change in management, if you know what I mean. So by that alone, season 2, was pretty much more planned out. But again, season 2, like I said, was that stepping stone to what could have been in future seasons, if future seasons were allowed to take off. Basically, that's what season 2 was. And, I agree with what you say here, Prime, and anybody else will agree. The episodes that were written by Lynn Jensen, who did a fair share of the first season episodes. Lynn Jensen only did the shorts. Along with Pat, both him and Pat did some of the shorts. Which, again, I do agree, you could skip over them and be like nothing was lost. I mean, even Ratsitsu says that in her retrospective on the Sonic cartoons, on the SonicSatAM, when she gets to that part, she basically points out that you could skip those 2 Antoine shorts and nothing would be affected. But again, like I said, the whole situation with season 2 was, yes, it was planned out, but in my honest opinion, it was planned out as the stepping stone for what would have been in future seasons had season 3 and maybe 4 and 5 gotten the green light. So, anyway, I do agree with you on that. But now on to the whole Sally theory. Again, this is something that we've been talking about for a while, but you brought up something that I brought up. I brought this up in videos as well as in some text topics and everything. I think you've read them and watched them. But you basically said, if I can get back to it, you basically said, this is what you said. You said, well, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you said that that the traitor probably is Sally, but not the Sally we know, which is something I brought up, and I'm sure other people brought up and pointed out. You also say that you find it hard to believe that Sally would just go right ahead and betray everyone. Will basically go right ahead and betray everyone One, because it's not in her character to do that, because she's been fighting for freedom, most of her life. But as you point out, Sally right now is not the Sally we know. She's not, I guess you could say she's not in her right mind. Because the Sally we know is trapped within the metallic body, the robotic body of Mecha Sally. And that Mecha Sally, knowing everything that the real Sally knows, will give information and advice, if need be, to Eggman, whether the real Sally wants to do that or not. So basically, as you say here, that by letting Eggman know all that, knowing certain things about, the battle plans for New Metropolis, or or this and that, yeah, she could be considered a traitor, but not a willing traitor. In other words, she'd be an unwilling traitor, just doing what she's programmed to do. And as you say, she isn't betraying anyone on her own free will. She's doing it because she has no free choice of her own. Now, you point out Harvey Hugh. And I like how you kind of sarcastically go with this. You go, quote, yeah, I know who the traitor is and I can tell you why. And you basically say, Harvey will probably go, it's Sally because she's an evil robot now, who has to do whatever the Batman tells her. Quick, Silverchan, go and rescue her because you are brave and don't smell at all like feet. Or crap like that. And that if Sally ends up getting deroboticized at issue 247, like some people are saying, but we can't really be too sure about that. That. Now, you also bring up another good theory that I think I've brought up once. I'm not too sure. And I'm sure a lot of people will agree with you that maybe Mammoth Mogul is messing with it. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Some are saying that that's not true. Some are saying Mammoth has regretted his decisions, has felt guilty. But you feel maybe Mammoth is doing that so he can alter the timeline, so he can have Silver alter the timeline to get rid of some problems that'll face him, problems like Sally. And as you say, effectively, it's more like he's trolling the shit out of Silver to do his bidding. But you also point out that Silver has gone back in time several times and has only gone back to his future to see it's been unchanged. And it's a good question here. You say, yeah, he's done that several times. Who's to say he goes back this time and it's still the same? That's a good point. Now, again, you bring up some good points, Prime, and I'm sure anybody here at these forums would agree. However, let me kind of get back to the whole traitor thing. You say basically she's an unwilling traitor, that she's giving that her and her mecha form, her mecha ego, her mecha personality knows everything her original personality does, and is giving that to Eggman, whether she likes to or not. I like to look at it like this. I like to kind of make a comparison to something, to several episodes, two scenes, if you will, from two different X-Men episodes from the 1990s. One was the episode where we got introduced to Miss Marvel, Clara Danvers. Basically, towards the end of that episode, Rogue had to trap Clara Danvers, if you will, inside a cement block, if you will. She had to do that. She had to trap her within some kind of prison, if you will. Now, another similarity towards that was Jean helping Charles defeat the dark kind of cocoon and trap and cocoon the dark Phoenix entity in Jean's mind so Jean can have control. Basically, that's what it reminds me of. That's kind of what it reminds me of. Basically, you have Sally sort of like trapped within a prison, like in a concrete steel prison, steel box, and all she could do is just stand there and watch as her mecha personality, Hold on.